Is this you right now? Is this you struggling to get your first pull up? Struggling. You can't even get yourself to the top of the bar or even close. Well, have no fear, boys. Today I'm here to help you get your first pull up or go from 1 to 2 pull ups to maybe 10 pull ups. It's a very simple process and I'll break it down from beginner to intermediate to advanced. Now, there's these different stages for a very simple reason. When you're a beginner, there are a very limited amount of exercises you can do to help build this movement capacity. And when you're an intermediate, the doors keep opening, and at advanced, there's a lot more options. So, just let me talk about the reason why pull-ups are such a great movement. Now, pull-ups on their own, they are very good for hypertrophy. The strength gains are phenomenal. They're not very taxing on recovery, so you can do them every day if you wanted to. Like, there's this method called greasing the groove, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more further on in the video. But basically, the whole premise is doing the movement every single day, and you can do the movement every day because it's so you can do it every day because it's not taxing on recovery. So, based on this fact, we're going to be talking about pull-ups, and it's honestly my favorite movement to build the back. Even better than rows, deadlifts, anything I can think of. I love pull-ups more than it, especially for the back. Now, as a beginner, someone who cannot even do pull-ups, there's a few crucial exercises that I recommend. First of all, we need to build the specific movement pattern itself because yes, you might have the musculature, but you might not have the ingrained movement pattern. Alright, so now as a beginner lifter trying to get your first pull-up, there's a few things I recommend doing. First of all, I recommend getting a movement specific exercise into your program. So something like that's an easier variation that replicates a pull-up. Now, if you think about it, like people who aren't strong enough to do regular push-ups, they may do push-ups on their knees, wall push-ups. They might do quite a few different variations, but for pull-ups, there's a few things that you can do to specifically mimic a regular pull-up. Now, my favorite two for the specific mimicking is band pull-ups or decline pull-ups, so the eccentric version of the pull-up. And I'll show some of these exercises on screen. Here you can see the banded pull-up. So you're just gonna have a band, you're gonna pull it down, put it over your knee, or if it's long enough, you can put it on your foot. Just make sure it doesn't slip because that'll be a bad time. After that, you can start working that into your program. I recommend 3 to 4 sets of 10 and just progressively overloading. For the bands, obviously, you can remove bands over time, making it a lot harder. Now, for the eccentric version of the push-up, or what I call the negative pull-up, is you're going to jump up to the top of the bar and then let yourself fall slowly. You can see it on screen here, but basically the whole point is you're building the movement pattern, you're building eccentric load, and it'll make you stronger over time. Now, these two exercises will both build strength and muscle, and especially the movement-specific strength. So you'll be building the pull-up strength. Now, let's talk inverted rows. Now, inverted rows are a very good exercise. They mimic a row. They're not very difficult, and usually you don't have to add weight to them. So they're a perfect exercise for those of you without a gym. Now, although this exercise isn't movement specific to a pull-up, it will help build the musculature of the back, which will obviously have carryover. It's not going to have specific carryover, but the muscle build will help, obviously, doing a pull-up. Now, this exercise is very simple. You can see it on screen. You can just, if you don't have a rack and a bar, you can use a 2 chairs and a broom handle. You can do it on a tree branch or something. You use rings to just use it. It's a very simple exercise and it'll help build the back musculature. Now, out of all these exercises, I recommend a few specific rep ranges for each. Now, for the inverted rows, I recommend something like a higher rep range, not too heavy. Usually, you can go heavy on this, but it's not something like a row. It's something you're already using your body weight, so just you kind of like rep it out. It's kind of like pull-ups as well. It's building a lot of strength and endurance as well. So you take inverted rows and you might want to do them for something like 3 or 4 sets of 6 to 10, maybe even more. 8 to 12 is a better rep range in my opinion.
It doesn't really matter what you do. I'd still say stick to the higher end, so around 6 to 12 in that rep range. Mainly because inverted rows in this case are specifically made for building hyper like muscle. So we're getting muscle here in this movement, and then for the let's see for the negative push. Now for the negative pull-ups, the one where you jump up to the top of the bar and let yourself go down. This you can do 3 sets of 10, just straightforward. There's not a way to progressively overload in weight for this movement, but we can use something like adding reps, adding sets over time. But eventually, if you're doing these negative pull-ups coincided with the banded pull-ups, you should be able to progressively overload just fine by just leaving that movement alone. And your main movement is going to be the banded pull-ups, which so 3 sets of 6 to 10 for the band pull-ups, 3 sets of 10 for the negative ones, and 3 sets of 6 to 10 or 8 to 12 for the inverted rows. That'll cover you.
Now, one quick thing to note is on evolving rep ranges, which is something like 6 to 10. You're gonna want to progress to the point where you can do like 10-9-8-7 or 10-9-9, something where you feel comfortable with the weight. Only when you hit that upper echelon of the rep range, that's when you progress. So only when you hit like the 10-9-8-7.
Now, as for programming, you can do this anywhere from 3 to 4 times a week. I wouldn't go beyond that because uh, if you're in the beginner stage, you don't have the work capacity to hop in and start doing it like 6, 7 times a week. So start 3 to 4 times a week, nice and conservative number. It's also not going to be too much where you get burnt out and you stop going. And one final note is make sure that you do the band pull-ups first, followed by the negative pull-ups, then the inverted rows, because the pull-up specific movements are the ones that you want to train. Therefore, you put them first, making sure that you use the most amount of energy towards that. Because otherwise, if you do something like the inverted rows first, you're gonna leave energy in the tank, or you're gonna use energy that you could use on the pull-ups, which you want to train for on the inverted rows, which is not the entire goal. Now, in the stage above a beginner, what I would classify as intermediate, in this case of doing pull-ups, so you've already maybe gotten your first pull-up or you're working towards increasing your amount of pull-ups from like 1 to 5 to 10. Now there's this technique known as greasing the groove, something I mentioned earlier, that you can use to help build your work capacity into your pull-ups. Now, this is a very simple concept. If you have a pull-up bar in your house, every time you go under it, or every time at a specific time, you're gonna go and hit a set of pull-ups. It's not gonna be to failure. It's gonna be like 60% of your maximum amounts of pull-ups. So if you can do only like even one, you just go up to the bar, do one, chill for 20, 30 minutes, even an hour, then you go again, hit a pull-up. This way, obviously, if you have just one workout session, you're gonna only be able to hit like one pull-up, maybe two pull-ups in the entirety of the session. This way, you're hitting a bigger amount of pull-ups throughout the entire day. So you're building that neurological efficiency in the movement, which makes it easier to do pull-ups. This is the best way, in my opinion, for the advanced stage, or sorry, the intermediate phase, to get more amounts of pull-ups into your program. Now, you can also, if you're in the higher rep range of pull-ups, like 5 pull-ups, you can just start doing like 4 sets of 5 and just build up musculature from there. You don't have to do anything complicated in that case. If you have more pull-ups, usually just doing the movement and progressively overloading, you're gonna be fine. Because in that phase, you still have new begin. So if, in that case, 3 times a week, same thing, 4 sets of 5 or 3 sets of 5, even 2 sets of 5, you'll still see progress. But then in that case, if it's a lower amount of pull-ups, like 5, you can do a rep range of 2 to 5 and then just build up into that. So you can aim for 5 reps, and when you can do 5-4-3 or maybe 5-5-4, you add more reps on your pull-up. So, or in that case, maybe you can start weighting that exercise. But I recommend 6 to 10 before you start weighting it. Now we hit the advanced stage, and obviously the definitions of advanced and beginner and intermediate, they're not coinciding with the normal definitions. Like in advanced, if you're an advanced trainee doing pull-ups, you'd be able to do like 80 kilogram pull-ups, just you'd be able to do a lot more than what I'm going to be talking about. But it's kind of like a progression scheme from not being able to do pull-ups to being able to do like 0 to 5 to being able to do 5 to 10. And I'm just telling you how to advance yourself on each stage. Now, in this stage, you're going to be able to do maybe 5 to 10 pull-ups. And when you're in this stage, simply do more pull-ups. Now, it may seem kind of strange to just say do more pull-ups, but when you're in that 5 to 10 zone, you can start progressively overloading. 6 to 10 rep range, 4 sets. And when that's really easy, you do what you do normally on a bench press. When it becomes too easy, you add weight. Now you start adding weight to the movement, and you're still in that 6 to 10 rep range. It's not a really small rep range, and it's not too high. 6 to 10 is really reasonable. And when you start adding weight to the movement, you're gonna blow up on your back. You're gonna get that demon back. So start weighting the movement and keep progressively overloading. It's very simple. There's a few other keys that I'd recommend when you're in that stage is don't just do pull-ups. Although it helps, you need to have your main vertical pull, which is your pull-ups with weight, with whatever, and then you're going to have your secondary movement. That's a very simple concept. Usually when you're doing something like a deadlift, you're going to want to have the regular deadlift, and then you're going to do something like an RDL to have carryover, which makes you drive your performance even higher than you normally do if you're just doing deadlifts. So this can be anything from rows, inverted rows. I usually like to prescribe rows in this case. So do something alongside pull-ups. So do your rows, do your pull-ups, and merge those together. Stage when you get you should probably build that into a program, something that encompasses not even just pull-ups, but you're going to be having everything. So get on some novice program or something like natural hypertrophy's program, and that way you can kind of customize it a little bit to your liking. Personally, I had there's always pull-ups in the program, so, and it's actually quite frequently there's pull-ups, chin-ups, like almost every training block. But there was a few exercises that were interchangeable with something like inverted rows or regular rows, so you can change those exercises out for rows, and then you have your pull-ups. So that concept comes together, your pull-ups become this much higher, your rows become that much higher, and you get gains, many gains. Now, just one more tip for any back movement in general is retract your scapula. Kind of, if you put your arms out in front of you and pull yourself back, you can kind of feel it. Think about pulling your scapula back and then initiating the pull. This will make it to the point where you pull more with your back. You should see it on screen here where I initiate the scapula right before I do the pull-up, and that's what you're going to want to do. And to train this skill, you can do something called scapula pull-ups, which you're just hanging on the bar and then you're just initiating your scapula pull. And this just builds the skill up over time and even strengthens the scapula. That you can do something like 3 sets of 5 or 4 sets of 5 to just build a skill into it, because it's still like these are all movement patterns that are skill. If you think about kicking a soccer ball, you're not going to be able to whip that shit as fast as possible. You're not going to be able to whip it as fast as possible when you first kick it. It's going to take time to build a movement pattern and get stronger into it. So build a movement pattern, and once you build it over time, you'll be able to do it more efficiently, which will make your pull-ups a lot better, and be able to pull more with your back, which is the whole point of the pull-up. That would be all for today. If you guys have any other questions, just let me know. But yeah, have a good one.